I'm kind of limp watching this.
Welcome to Sincast, presented by CinemaSins.
All right, guys, welcome to the Sincast. This is Chris Atkinson from CinemaSins, joined as always by the voice of CinemaSins, Jeremy Scott.
Howdy, hi.
And from Music Video Sins, Barrett Share.
Hello.
And we're continuing this series of best of years in which we've been alive. This one is 1986.
Bueller.
Dance, magic, dance, magic, dance, magic. Get away from her, you bitch!
You've lost that love and feeling.
Don't you look at me, fuck!
1986.
The first thing that pops off on 1986 when I look at the IMDb's list of popular 86 movies and everything, it's basically the 1-2 punch of Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Stand By Me. And I say 1-2 punch because John Hughes and Rob Reiner could not have been in a hotter streak of movies. I don't think these two directors have been touched as far as coming out with a movie basically every year and coming out with quality movies every single time.
Yeah, this was in Rob Reiner's run with When Harry Met Sally, and I had this whole podcast that was too echoey to use where a friend and I talked about directors who've had 5 good movies in a row. And it's basically Hitchcock and Rob Reiner.
Yeah.
Unless you sort of bend the rules on what counts as a great movie. And you're right, he was in his prime right now and on Stand By Me. And that's one of my favorite movies from any era.
Oh yeah, and it started Reiner's sort of relationship with Stephen King adaptations. He does it a couple of more times, I think. Stand By Me is just one of those movies. It's just, you can watch that anytime. It's sure. It doesn't matter where it is in the movie. It's great. It's got a cast that just went on to be huge afterwards. You don't see that happen very often with young actors like that. You have that young anyway, 12, 13 years old, all going on to have pretty big careers. Of course, River Phoenix was taken from us way too soon, but it's just, that's just a fantastic movie. And a little cameo with John Cusack in there too.
Yeah. And it's weird. It's one of the only film adaptations of Stephen King that's not horror. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a straightforward coming of age story.
It's actually the horror has happened off screen because they're going to go see a dead body, and it's kind of it's really interesting that I never read the is it a novella that Stephen King wrote?
Yeah,
for
it's
Stand
called
By
The
Me?
Body.
Yeah, it's called The Body. Okay, was it anything like this? It was kind of like Shawshank, where they kind of changed a lot of things and made it into...
No, it's very true to form. If I remember correctly, it's pretty close to the actual text there.
Oh, okay. 2 huge action movies: Top Gun and Aliens.
Yeah.
Top Gun, I think, is what really put Cruise on the map. He was sort of like the up and comer with Risky Business and all this other stuff. But Top Gun really put Tom Cruise in that huge stratosphere. And everything he came out with after that was making hundreds of millions of dollars every single time.
Yeah.
But Top Gun, it's over the years, it's gotten a weird reputation, right? It used to be the most awesomest movie ever back in 1986. And then I just keep running into people who hate it, just completely hate it. And also there's a moment in the movie Sleep With Me where Quentin Tarantino has this big, huge rant about how it's one of the best scripts ever made because it's got all this homosexual undercutting in it. Basically, everything in the movie is basically whether Tom Cruise should be gay or straight in the movie. And it's so funny. If you can find that clip on YouTube, by the way. You don't even need to watch Sleep With Me. Just find the Quentin Tarantino clip where he's talking about Top Gun. It's great.
Well, between Top Gun and Take My Breath Away and Pretty in Pink, Labyrinth,
Oh yeah.
a few other movies this year, like it was a big year for theme songs. Ferris Bueller doing Twist and Shout and things like that. It was a nice tie-in from music to movies for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, in Labyrinth, you had David Bowie basically just, that's just isn't this both what you would never think David Bowie would do and also everything David Bowie would do? Because it's like that, right? I mean, you watch Labyrinth and it's like, this is so unusual, but it's so David Bowie too.
Well, for our generation, that was standard issue Bowie.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We didn't know about the Ziggy Stardust days until later on and what he became in the 90s and the 2000s. So this was kind of when they do that Flight of the Concorde thing with Bowie in space and things like that. They reference like the different phases of Bowie, and the final phase of Bowie was 1986 Labyrinth Bowie. And,
Yeah.
Starts walking on walls and shit.
Yeah. What else, guys?
Well, there was a little movie called The Color of Money.
Yeah. Yep.
That happens to be one of my personal favorites.
Sequel to The Hustler?
Yeah. Like years later, decades later. And another young Tom Cruise, but unlike Top Gun, he shows off some acting chops in this movie, which might have been the first movie where he really displayed that kind of talent. I love that movie. If you've never seen it, I recommend it highly. But also, we got to talk about, this is not the best movie of 1986, but we got to talk about Three Amigos, because
Yep.
out of all these movies we're going to talk about, the ones from 1986 I watched the most, hands down, were Hoosiers and Three Amigos.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's probably evident in the Sins videos with how often we put Three Amigos audio at the end in the outtakes.
I didn't see Three Amigos when it came out in theaters, and I remember because I was in third grade, I guess, or fourth, but third and fourth in 1986. But I just remember so many people doing that little, thing that they do.
Macarena type
Yeah. Yeah. I remember so many people doing that. It was such a huge movie, like for people my age, just doing that in general. But like I watched it later, and yeah, it's such a fantastic comedy. So good. And of course it has inspired, Bug's Life and the Galaxy Quest and all that, later on.
It's so quotable.
Yes.
And it's so absurd. There's just crazy shit in there that just you don't see anymore. Like, it's a bonkers comedy, and everybody is at their peak, and they're playing off of each other at their peak.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's so much fun to watch.
Another one, this might be David Cronenberg's most accessible movie, but it's also still strange and weird, and it's The Fly, which
that
is
sentence should never be uttered. Like, I don't know that he has any approachable movies.
The Fly is as close as it gets. It's sci-fi horror, and it's still got Cronenberg-ism in it, but like it's pretty straightforward overall. Yeah. But it's a fun movie.
What do you guys think about Hoosiers?
I love Hoosiers.
Love Hoosiers.
Okay, because I was like, it was in my top 5 as I was sort of narrowing down my choices, and I was looking all these up online to see, what the Academy or other critics thought of it. It doesn't seem to have that great a reputation among like the IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. It seemed kind of average score, and I was like, wait, I thought that movie was great.
Yeah,
I lived in Indiana.
No, I thought everybody loved Hoosiers.
Yeah.
7.6 on the IMDb is generally classic. So, I mean, there are some things about it where, you sit there and you watch this team that basically only has 7 players on it or whatever, and they go and take on this much bigger team at the end, like just huge team, like that. What in the world? How in the world are they keeping up with that team at all? Doesn't make any sense. Like, and they obviously they took liberties with the actual story and everything, right. So that's the reason why it seems so incongruous. But Hoosiers is great though. I mean, you can't watch that movie without like really feeling something the entire time during their huge run, and like especially like the scenes where like they fire Gene Hackman, and the best player in the little town decides, I'll play as long as the coach stays. Yeah. It's such a great moment,
And I know all the music.
Yeah. And this is classic Gene Hackman, Dennis Hopper territory too. Like, Gene Hackman has that great, he's just that great scene where he's like, throw me out of the game, or I'm going to start screaming like a bloody fool or whatever, and they just tells the ref, like, just kick me out of the game, and he does it for Dennis Hopper so he can be the coach of the team and everything. And Dennis Hopper he got nominated for that too. That was his one Oscar nomination, maybe. I don't know if he's ever gotten nominated other times, but he got nominated for this. So good movie.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, good.
Oh, well, and then speaking of Dennis Hopper, Blue Velvet, and you're talking about not accessible, David Lynch.
Why are all the inaccessible directors named David?
Yeah, exactly. David Lynch is such a weird director, man. Like, look, I enjoy probably most of the movies I've ever seen from David Lynch. I don't think I've ever understood them all completely, though. And Blue Velvet's another one of those. It's as straightforward as a David Lynch movie gets.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, he is so Dennis Hopper. If you haven't seen this, Dennis Hopper is like evil incarnate in this movie.
Yes.
And he's just got this. It's almost like Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, where he's got this ventilator thing that he huffs nitrous oxide, I guess, right? And it makes him somehow even creepier. It's absolutely crazy.
And he keeps finding creative ways to put the word fuck in everything he says. He'll punctuate a sentence with it. It's one of those things, But yeah, Blue Velvet is one of those movies that I recommend watching, like, if you're in the mood for something very strange, so and it's one of it's a very good movie. It's just that it's got so many weird things in it.
Yeah. We need to talk about Manhunter a little bit, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Hannibal Lecter, or basically.
Yeah, this was Brian Cox playing Hannibal Lecter, and playing just like all these novels do. It's more about seeing what he knows about another serial killer in order to get that person.
Right.
But Brian Cox plays Hannibal Lecter, and if you're used to Anthony Hopkins, it's such a weird performance, Yeah. It's completely different from what we know of Anthony Hopkins. But William Peterson, who later of CSI fame, is the investigator in that too. And a good movie, really good.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
What else, guys?
Ugh,
you don't like it? You didn't like Manhunter?
No. I mean, it hit all the parts of The Red Dragon that it was taken from, which was remade into the movie called The Red Dragon.
Right.
Ratner's finest film.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I thought William Peterson was way over the top whenever he was investigating somebody. Like, he's always talking it out loud, and he's always talking about the case, and he's like, here's what you did. You did this. You were looking right at him, right? You did, didn't you son of a bitch? You did, you little son of a bitch. Like, he says that over and over again.
Well, and I haven't seen it in a long time, so when I watch it again, I'm just going to be sitting there with maniacal laughter the entire time. Maniacal laugh.
Well, speaking of laughing and comedy, there's some good comedies from this year that we still haven't mentioned. Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah.
Which is being remade with The Rock.
Of course it is.
Like everything. The Rock is starring in half the movies in production right now.
It will instantly make more than this movie made back in 1986. It made like $11 million, I think, in 1986. Yeah. It'll probably do that in its opening weekend.
It's like the classic example of bomb that turned into a hit later. But, it's not, I don't think it's like a great movie or anything, but it sure is a fun time.
So entertaining to watch it at any time. I mean, you're right. It's never great, but it's so watchable. And John Carpenter secretly, just quietly making just all these fun movies for nearly a decade at this point in his career. Hardly anything is amiss. Speaking about, talking about directors who were on a roll, Carpenter was, and he continues that a couple years after this too.
Yeah. And another big comedy, Golden Child.
Yeah, which Big Trouble in Little China they made quickly in order to beat this one because it was so similarly themed.
Right. And it was also a movie I wasn't allowed to watch. Eddie Murphy was pretty much off limits for my growing up years.
But it was his like first PG-13 movie, like in a string of R-rated movies. And believe me, I wasn't allowed to watch this movie either. But it was sort of a step down from what he had been doing up to this point.
Yeah, at least in terms of like the hardness of the comedy.
Yeah.
Speaking of comedies, one more I want to mention, The Money Pit.
Yeah.
One that I've seen probably maybe the most of this year. And it's a terrific comedy. Do you guys like this at all?
I've only seen it like twice. I remember liking it, but it's not one that, hit me as I need to watch this over and over again. But,
same here. In the indelible image of Tom Hanks laughing at a hole in the floor is always going to be with me, because you don't see that type of thing in comedies anymore. Like just someone just going for it like that, or being allowed to go for it like that. And
they keep on him for a while.
Yes.
They let him go.
They do that thing that I've heard Simpsons writers talk about, where like it's funny at first and then they purposely put it to a point where it's going so long that it's not funny anymore. But the longer you go, it gets funnier again. And it's kind of like that.
It's got this crazy laugh. Terrific.
Yeah.
But no, it's funny, man. That's Tom Hanks. I think Tom Hanks is really coming into his own, because he did Splash and Bachelor Party and everything, and now he's right in the comedy zone. This is obviously before he started going into dramas and things like that. So
yeah,
if you want to see Prime Hanks, this is Prime Hanks.
Yeah, this is sort of his stepping stone into Big, which would be his first huge big hit and everything. But yeah, he's definitely Prime Hanks here, and I wish he had kind of kept that career. But once he went to Philadelphia and all that other type of stuff, it became harder for him, I think, to be just like doing that 80s Tom Hanks anymore. So
there's one more huge comedy from this year that we have to talk about, 9.5 Weeks.
Oh yeah. A salacious movie back in 1986.
Oh God, was it controversial?
But then you watch it today and you're like, man, I'm kind of limp watching this.
Basic Instinct makes that movie look tame. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah, this movie, I remember we did this for an Everything Wrong With or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, how much are we going to have to blur out of this? Not much.
Not very much. But isn't this one of the movies where that urban legend is they supposedly had real sex during one of the scenes?
I'm sure like every one of these movies where there's like sex is involved, there's a rumor of some sort, but I don't know. I don't know of a major one.
I might be thinking of a different one then.
Yeah.
Well, it's pre-boxing career Mickey Rourke, so she probably found him attractive enough to,
Yeah. Well, and before you told the joke, Jeremy, I thought you were going to talk about Back to School. This has got some funny stuff in it, but I hate this movie.
Oh, me too.
What?
Yeah, it's not good at all. It's not good. Rodney Dangerfield has some really good play on words, and I love the Sam Kinison thing. But yeah, I actually watched this 2 or 3 months ago or so, and I was like, man, this movie's just not good at all. There's a few funny moments in it, but that's it.
Yeah, no, it's not a good movie or anything. It depends on. It's like if you like Bob Dylan or if you like Bruce Springsteen and you like their delivery and you like their whole oeuvre. You know, if you don't like Rodney Dangerfield, just kind of conceptually, I don't know if you do or not. This is kind of like a screwball right in Dangerfield's wheelhouse. And I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I like this movie just because I kind of just saw it enough to where the jokes kind of landed on me.
Yeah.
This was a great Steve Martin year, because I don't think we've talked about Little Shop of Horrors yet.
Nope.
Yeah.
And so with Three Amigos and Little Shop of Horrors, it's right up there with some of his finest work, I think. I think Little Shop is maybe that's maybe that's not everyone's taste. I don't know. It's one of those movies I love.
But it's such a fun movie. Especially the Big Green Mother from Outer Space song, and all that, whatever they call that. But that song always got me just going because it's such a fun song.
Yeah,
and everything. Yeah. And this is probably there was another Little Shop of Horrors that came out in the 60s or something like that.
Yeah,
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson was in it.
Yeah.
Martin's part.
Yeah, and I haven't seen that one. And of course, I believe this was a stage play, right? Before that stage musical. But this is the most popular version of it that I know of, and it's got such a great cast in it, and funny and entertaining. And so yeah, I if you haven't seen that, I would recommend it.
Well, I've still got a few on my list that I think are worth mentioning as memorable movies, even though they're not competitive for the top prize.
Mm-hmm.
But Space Camp, everyone I know watched that movie.
Yeah,
which oddly came out in the same year that Challenger exploded.
Yeah.
I believe they did something. They did some sort of charity thing with it when it came out, but it was one of those unfortunate things where they made a movie about space, NASA and everything, and then that horrible disaster happened on my birthday, no less.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. But yeah, Space Camp, I haven't seen that since 1986, I don't think.
Oh, I haven't either, and I doubt it holds up very well, but it's it was important to me for a time.
Yeah.
We also mentioned last week, I think in the preview, I was joking mostly, but Mosquito Coast came out this year.
Mm-hmm.
This is River Phoenix, Harrison Ford. It's weird. I land on the side of it being enjoyable, but it's not for everybody. It's about this guy who moves his whole family down into the jungle and kind of goes crazy a little bit. Anyway, also, have you guys ever seen The Name of the Rose?
I haven't.
That's Sean Connery and the youngest Christian Slater you're likely to find on film.
Yeah.
Basically investigating a murder in a monastery. It's set way back in the past, and it's basically Spanish Inquisition era type setting background. I enjoy it. It's kind of slow, and it's not anywhere near the best movie of the year, but it was worthy in my mind of putting on the list.
Well, speaking of slow, let me throw one out there. If you are I've talked about him before on this. Jim Jarmusch directed a movie called Down by Law this year. And we had talked about Roberto Benigni actually being in Life is Beautiful. This was his first American film role. And it stars with John Lurie, who worked with Jim Jarmusch a million times, and Tom Waits, who's the iconic singer Tom Waits. But he's also a terrific actor. And these guys are terrific together. Like, they're hilarious. Three guys that are getting out of a New Orleans jail and trying to make their way back and everything. And Roberto Benigni barely understands English. I think it may be he didn't understand them. And no, it's really, really good. It's very deliberately paced, much like all of his stuff, but you should check it out for sure.
Also, this is definitely the strangest Star Trek that has ever come out, right? Star Trek 4. That is the weirdest one ever.
But I love it. I love it so much.
Well, and yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like Rocky 4, right? It's the same type of deal when it comes to this movie, because it just doesn't make any sense that it is enjoyable in any at all. So I mean, what was going on in the 80s, man? Like, these movies that, that basically franchises that came from the 70s, when they got into the late 80s, they started just going nuts, man. Yeah.
Well, and this is up there. Star Trek 4: The Voyage Home is up there with Demolition Man in my mind, in terms of the most simple pitch for a movie ever. Like, someone said, "Let's make this Save the Whales." Just like somebody said, "Let's make this a Taco Bell action movie."
Right.
And that was it. And so key decisions were made before anything was done that derailed the possibility of it being great.
I mean, do you remember did you guys see that Key and Peele thing when they're doing the Gremlins 2 pitch?
I saw the headline. I didn't click it.
Oh my God. It's one of their funniest ones. And I mean, Gremlins 2, we'll get to that later on, but But it reminds me of that, like just every insane idea that comes up at the table, they just decide, yep, that's going to be in the movie or whatever,
And not any no men in the room, just all yes men.
Right. I know a movie that me and an old neighbor used to watch all the time was Iron Eagle.
It was like Top Gun Jr.
Yeah, it was Top Gun Jr. It came out the same year, and I remember watching it. I didn't watch it in the theaters, but I watched it a couple years later, and I thought, oh, they must have made this movie because of Top Gun. But no, they made this movie in the same year.
Yeah,
but,
I saw that movie at the local Blockbuster and almost rented it probably like 17 times. I was like, looks pretty good. Never did.
And
I think they made like 3 or 4 of them, didn't they?
Yeah. In fact, it might be past that at this point. They may have made more. Yeah, they made a ton. They made a ton of those. But
was it Louis Gossett Jr.?
Yeah. And it's just, I just remember the thing I remember the most about it though is the kid. I think it's Jason Gedrick, who's like, he's telling Louis Gossett Jr. is like, I'm ready, man. And Louis Gossett Jr. is like, you ain't ready for shit, boy. And we kept rewinding it back and forth because we thought that was the funniest thing ever. We saw it and we watched it 30 times before letting the movie go. Also, An American Tale came out in 1986. Another formative cartoon when I was young, especially the Somewhere Out There song and all that. It's just this is Don Bluth in his prime. Don Bluth was just amazing. So
and I felt so sorry for that little mouse.
Yeah, I did too.
How do you guys feel about Highlander?
I am a big fan of Highlander, but it's not as good of a movie as I remember. I remember really liking it when I was a teenager. And then when you watch it later, it's like, there's some bad things in this, but
but still a kind of a cult classic.
Yeah,
has some measure of cultural impact.
And
why didn't Christopher Lambert have a bigger career? Do you think
it's because of his accent?
Yeah, the accent.
I mean, Schwarzenegger got away with it because I think it was easily imitable and all this other type of stuff, but Christopher Lambert's got that really, I don't know, it's a really weird French accent, and I think
the only one.
Yeah. And so he was relegated to all these, these B movie, straight to video type movies and everything, and Mortal Kombat.
Just the first one.
Yeah, just the first one. Yeah. He didn't even want to go to the second one. But I'm a fan of Highlander. I really like it. And it's got, and you were talking, Barrett, you're talking about soundtracks and stuff. The Queen soundtrack that's on that.
Oh yeah.
Is I don't know if Queen fans love it, but I do. I think it's
good. It the King of the Universe?
Who Wants to Live Forever? There's another one I think on there, but I can't remember it right now. But
that's a badass soundtrack.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Who Wants to Live?
One of the more rocking ones that they've had.
Well, and Who Wants to Live Forever is like a huge ballad and everything, but it's the one that's like all the way through the movie. But yeah, I enjoy that. Another movie that came out in 1986, The Transformers. It really. That movie took your childhood and just gunned it down right in the beginning, the first 10 minutes. Yeah. And that's the reason why it's awesome, by the way, because it didn't give a fuck. It just said, you know what? You like these characters? Fuck them. Yeah. But love Transformers, the movie, way better than any of the other Transformers that have come out since.
Oh, for sure. And I have mentioned last week, I think, that I wasn't a G.I. Joe kid. I was a Transformers kid. I watched the cartoons after school. I had Transformers comic books. I had all the toys. So this movie is right in my wheelhouse, and I'm glad you brought it up.
There's actually plenty of others to talk about. I'll go just kind of run through them. The Hitcher, which if you're a big Rutger Hauer fan, is a good sort of suspense movie.
If you're a big Rutger Hauer fan.
Yeah.
For all of you people out there that are big Rutger Hauer fans.
Yeah. There's at least 5, right?
There's a Venn diagram of the Rutger Hauer fan club and the Sincast fans.
Well, it's like
there's probably a 1.5.
Hey, they probably like Blade Runner too. They probably like Blade Runner. There's I mean, surely there's at least 6 people out there that like Rutger Hauer.
6?
At least 6.
Yeah,
at least.
Totally.
And C. Thomas Howell. Let's not forget C. Thomas Howell too.
C. Thomas.
There's a huge fan base for C. Thomas Howell as well. But The Hitcher is I don't know if you guys have ever seen The Hitcher, but it's a good suspense movie. A little good suspense B movie or whatever.
Yeah.
The Great Mouse Detective came out in 1986.
Yeah.
At
was
close
just on last night.
Oh, was it?
Well,
Interesting.
I was flipping by and I saw it for a few minutes.
At Close Range came out in 1986. That was shot partially at my future high school. It was shot in Franklin, and it was shot also during the time that Madonna and Sean Penn had just gotten married. So there was like a whole bunch of paparazzi all over Franklin, this small town of Franklin, trying to get pictures of Sean Penn and Madonna during that time. So that was like, but At Close Range, aside from the fact that it was shot in my hometown and everything, is actually a really good movie if you've never seen it. And what else? Is there anything else? I don't think we have mentioned Platoon yet.
No.
I didn't come. Oh yeah, it's on my list. How did we not mention that?
Well, I think we went past all these big movies, and I think we just assumed we had. Platoon was the Oscar winner for Best Picture in 1986. This is Oliver Stone, but I'm trying to think if it wasn't his debut, was it? He came out with something else before that. He didn't. Yeah, he had not really done anything huge up until this point. Platoon. But I generally like all of these huge Vietnam War movies. They're all good, like Apocalypse Now, Platoon, and Full Metal Jacket. I generally like them all, but Platoon, especially with the scene where the Adagio for strings music is going on and all that, it's got a good sort of like I guess a rivalry between Tom Berenger and Willem Dafoe in the movie and everything. I really enjoy Platoon. I don't think it's going to win, but it's got to be considered at least in this whole 1986 best of or whatever.
I won't deny its quality, even though it's not going to get my vote.
Yeah. But I really do love Platoon. It's a good movie, and but I think I have some others that I like better.
The only ones I got left on my list are terrible movies, like Howard the Duck, that are just only worthy of mention because they're so bad. Yeah.
And then for some reason they decided to show him in an end credit scene in Guardians of the Galaxy for some reason.
That was a huge payoff. I loved that.
Oh yeah. I love sitting through 15 minutes of credits to get to that type of scene.
I remember thinking, what the fuck?
Yeah. Well, and that's the way it is always. I've gotten to the point now where I probably should have done this a long time ago, but I'm just going to leave now. I'm just going to leave before that end scene actually happens because
somebody on the internet will tell you.
I'm not missing anything. We haven't mentioned, we mentioned, I think, in a previous podcast, Short Circuit, but I don't think we talked about it.
Oh, you're right. We didn't. It's not great. That doesn't hold up at all.
No, but another huge, when you're 9, great movie.
Oh, geez. I watched the hell out of that movie.
Yeah.
The robot becomes essentially human. And even though it's not even remotely human-like, you empathize with it.
Yeah.
And between he picks up his name by listening to Who's Johnny, which I think is a Roxette song, or is it Loverboy?
No, I can't remember.
Anyway, some shitty 80s song.
Yeah.
And
there's probably more fans of Rutger Hauer than that band.
Yeah, probably so. And you got Fisher Stevens with a really absurd, not since Mickey Rooney and Breakfast with Tiffany's have you seen an entire culture just demeaned by an accent.
Oh my God. It's one of those worst examples.
Oh yeah. Crocodile Dundee came out in 1986. Another one that I remember we had some sort of Aussie fever back in the 80s, you know. It's like we loved Crocodile Dundee and we loved Yahoo Serious and Young Einstein and all this other type of stuff. But you know, Crocodile Dundee has that, you know, the classic "That's not a knife" line and all that other type of stuff, and that's about it. What else? Cobra is another one that came out in 1986.
Oh, wow.
But I think we're ready to vote.
I think we are. We're scraping the bottom of the barrel now.
Yeah. So what's the order today, Barrett?
The order today is Barrett, Jeremy, and Chris as the deciding vote.
Ooh, okay.
Wow, this is going to be really. I am really curious to see where this goes.
I am too.
Yeah. Well, before I move on to the vote, I just want to clarify that El DeBarge is the band that did Who's Johnny.
Oh, okay.
I feel like a real weight has been lifted off of my chest.
If you're a big fan of El DeBarge,
Yeah, if you're a big, this Venn diagram is getting bigger. For me, it's Aliens, hands down. Even though I love Platoon, I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Those were kind of the other contenders for me. But Aliens is fantastic. James Cameron, you know, Ellen Ripley coming back after being in cryosleep for however many years, and you know, the interplay between her and Paul Reiser and Bill Paxton, the Marines and everything. And the alien, you know, I know what we liked about the first one was that you didn't see the alien as much, and it kind of became like this off-screen haunt. With here, it's a lot more prevalent because there are more aliens and a lot more alien cubs, basically. But it's a really good action film. Really well acted, really well performed, really well directed. It's my favorite.
Yeah,
it's like I wish more franchises would do this, where from movie to movie they change genres completely. Even the third Alien feels like a completely different type of movie. But yeah, it's almost the antithesis of the first one. All the guns and all the shooting and action. But it hits all the right high notes. It's on my list of 3 movies I'm going to vote for, but I'll let Chris say his piece now.
No, you've said everything that I needed to say, so go on and vote.
I'm sorry. Aliens is on my list of the 3 movies, should we go 3 rounds, that I will be putting up for my best, but Stand By Me gets my vote for the best movie of 1986. For all the reasons we talked about earlier, no reason to hit all those points again, but I think it's just one of the finest films about growing up that I've ever seen that still rings pretty true today. It doesn't feel dated. Not probably because it was sort of set in the past, but still, I love that movie. If I see it on when I'm flipping channels, I stop every time.
Yeah, Stand By Me is just generally excellent movie. I'm actually surprised the IMDb users have got this to 8.1. It's that high. I don't hear a lot of people talk about this movie very much, but it's deserving of that rating. Totally. We are going to have a split vote here because I'm going to go Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I feel like John Hughes was just cooking. You know, he was at just a different level in this. I don't know how it's a miracle how he did all these movies in 3 years. But Ferris Bueller's Day Off, if you're talking about culturally and everything, people still say Bueller, all that. It's one of the best fantasies I've ever seen too. Even though it's a comedy, it's one of the best fantasies I've ever seen. To be able to do all of that stuff, of course, it's impossible to do the things that they did in Ferris Bueller's Day Off all in one day when you're in Chicago.
You get from downtown to Wrigley back and everything up to Forest Park. Yeah.
But it's that's part of the fantasy, man, and it also made us all wonder: could we really make our odometers go backwards by putting a car in reverse and putting it on block so it can't go anywhere? But there's so many things about that movie that we still quote it today, and we still, you know, I don't know. It's just of all the movies that are on here, I don't see anything that's as impactful. Although I love Aliens and I love Hoosiers and I love Stand By Me and all these movies, I can maybe pop Ferris Bueller's Day Off at any point and just watch it. So it's good.
Sure. I can argue with that pick, man.
Yeah, it's interesting, like how much it kind of Ferris is kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
in
yeah.
that movie.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's a selfish asshole.
More than kind of. He's a total asshole.
He's a total asshole, but because it's Matthew Broderick and playing him so, it's almost like what I was saying with Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future last week, is he plays it so charismatically that he could, probably kill somebody in the movie and we'd be like, oh,
Well, and and
it's so sweet.
And Jeffrey Jones as the principal is doing his job. He's doing his job, and he is the bad guy in the movie. And it's just an interesting trick. There's also a really awesome theory that Cameron is dreaming of Ferris Bueller. He is inventing Ferris Bueller so that he can do the things that he wants to do in the movie. And if you watch it under that sort of that Ferris Bueller doesn't really exist in the movie, that puts a whole other additional piece of enjoyment for you when you're watching it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're split. So what's our second choice?
Let's go another round. I'm actually going to side with Jeremy and go Stand By Me as my second one.
All right.
I love that movie for the same reasons. It's a great coming of age story.
Yeah, this is going to be the longest podcast we've ever done. My second is Aliens. So Barrett and I just 1-2'd each other, and now it's back to Chris.
It when we 1-2 each
and
other.
I kind of hope Chris goes like Hoosiers or something way off.
Well, I'm not. I'm going to go Aliens. Aliens is so good, and just like Barrett was saying there. I mean, you just have. How in the world? That's another great magic trick that James Cameron pulled in this thing, is that we loved Alien for being what it was, and then in Aliens it's just all carnage and it's Bill Paxton. Yeah. Game over, man. Game over. And Sigourney Weaver has turned into a great actress by this point. And they put that fascinating relationship with her and Newt in the movie, where she's basically playing a mother figure, and she never had a chance to be a mother herself, and it adds such an interesting dynamic to this action movie, and we don't see that very much either, where there's a female protagonist who kicks that much ass and can still be a mom at the same time.
I always saw Newt as like higher stakes Jones the cat.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's exactly right. I don't have an argument.
So Alien wins.
Yeah.
Aliens wins.
Oh yeah.
Aliens
it does.
win.
It
Aliens
does.
wins. Aliens wins.
So that means we picked Alien in 79 and we picked Aliens in 86.
Yeah.
Well, the Alien fans will be proud of us.
Alien 3 shall not be winning best of its year. Even though that was a David Fincher movie.
What's funny is we put a joke in that Alien Sins video we just did about something about that will spawn a bunch of unbearable sequels or what have you. But there are a lot of shitty Alien movies. People forget they made 2 Alien versus Predator movies.
Yep.
Anyway, and I guess Prometheus if you count that.
Yeah. But so Aliens is our winner. 1987 will be the next week's one, and there's movies on there like The Princess Bride, Adventures in Babysitting, Full Metal Jacket, Dirty Dancing, Predator, The Lost Boys, Jaws the Revenge, Spaceballs, RoboCop, The Untouchables. See, now this is going to be a tough year.
It is. I already have a conflicting opinion just on the ones you've named off so far.
Yeah, Empire of the Sun, The Running Man, Lethal Weapon, Mannequin, so on and so forth. Wall Street, Fatal Attraction, Raising Arizona. Great year. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Good Morning Vietnam. I mean, it's 87. I think I said this a couple of weeks ago. I remember this being a pretty good year, so we're going to have a lot to talk about on the next Sincast. This week, we're going to be talking about comic book crossovers, like genre crossovers.
I'm an ideas man, Michael. I think I proved that with Mountain.
Up is down, down is up. He says hello when he leaves, goodbye when he arrives.
Time to make the chimmy fucking chongas. Wait, that's your pitch?
Instead of just the same old boring comic book good versus evil stuff, well, maybe there's some good and evil stuff in these, but crossing genres this time. Jeremy, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Well, I was actually going to see if you wanted to retell your idea that sort of spawned this whole topic.
Well, it was when Barrett and I were talking about X-Men Apocalypse, and I was thinking that it would be funny if you had Quicksilver and Nightcrawler in a road movie where they're driving cross country or something, and they're interacting and talking and having all that dialogue. And then getting in a situation that requires their abilities. Now, essentially, they're the same ability-wise, I feel. Like, they get to places fast, and, it's a little bit differently how they do it. But I think personality-wise, they're completely different. And I think it could be one of those Odd Couple type road movies where you have, someone who, and I guess you would have Nightcrawler be the straight man to Quicksilver's, joke guy. But that's sort of what I'm thinking is, instead of making a whole movie that revolves around they have to defeat this sort of evil, have a point where they're like, and now, of course, I said this offhanded as a road movie or whatever. I mean, I don't think they would necessarily need a car to drive around, but maybe, something that would involve them going cross country in some way, in some form. But that was sort of the offhanded thing that I was saying. And it's really just saying, it would be nice to see them in a completely different kind of picture.
Yeah, and so today we're going to expand on that concept, right?
Yes.
I'm going to cheat right out of the gate and hit you with two because they're both Batman related.
Okay.
I don't think I can claim authorship of either of these. I think I've seen these in various other forms online in enough places that I don't think anyone invented these ideas. But I want to see a Batman horror film. I want to see a Batman film that feels like Alien, where Batman is the alien and we rarely see him and he's terrorizing this group of criminals and hunting and defeating them. And I just think that would be you just go all the way to the other side from, I guess the Schumacher era Batmans and show us just a really visceral, R-rated, he's scares the shit out of them. Like, no Batman movie has come close to capturing that except maybe Batman Begins in that dock scene. But I'd like to see a whole movie like that. I don't know how you guys feel.
Somehow making him the antagonist instead of making him the the fighter of good and whatever. We'd have to make the bad guys, sort of like Goodfellas or whatever.
Yeah.
Where we're rooting for the bad guys, but there's this guy who keeps coming in, and it would be an interesting flip, and I would love to watch this movie actually.
Yeah, and my other Batman one, real quick, and then
you can make it. You can make it scary. You can make it genuinely scary,
right?
Like Alien, right? I mean, if you set up what he can do and what he's capable of, and if he kind of goes across the line of killing people and things like that, you can make this genuinely terrifying.
But just think about how he is in Batman Begins when he first introduces himself, and it's in that warehouse or whatever. What is it? Right. Was it an alleyway or a dock or something? I can't remember what it was.
It's the dock.
And it's almost like a horror movie in the way he shows up in that, but we know he's the protagonist and everything in that situation, but it's not too far removed from what you're saying.
Yeah, no, and I think, just like Alien, I don't think ultimately we care all that much about anybody but Ripley in that movie.
Right.
And so you make one of the characters an undercover cop who's infiltrated this crime gang, and we see the way he sees Batman terrorizing the criminals. And, you've got somebody to root for a little harder, and Batman becomes the scary bad guy. I just think it would be awesome. Yeah,
I think it would be awesome too. And these ideas we're going to come up with today are obviously pipe dreams, because studios would never risk their huge franchise character in a horror movie of any sort. Unfortunately, because everybody wants to see Batman beat up the bad guys and be the good guy instead of beating up anti-hero bad guys.
Well, and another Batman they're never going to give us is that second Batman idea that I had, which is basically, let's tell Batman as a detective, right? Like the thing that's always lost from the comics to the films is the way that Batman's one of the greatest detectives and criminal investigative minds in the world. And, again, Nolan gives us a little bit of this in The Dark Knight where he like pulls the chunk of wall out with the bullet and figures some stuff out that way. But I want to see like an LA Confidential style movie that is all about like finding out the answers to this murder mystery and criminal syndicate or what have you. Only instead of 3 LA cops, we've got Batman we're following. Maybe even if it's Bruce Wayne sometimes. But let's see a movie where we get to show off how great his mind is. He's supposed to be like Sherlock Holmes of the comic world.
Yeah, most of the Batman movies that we have seen have had him figure something out after the fact. He's already figured it out and he's telling somebody about it.
Or Alfred's just telling him.
Yeah. Right. We don't get to see him actually do, and this is an underrated part of movies, is when we get to see the discovery as the hero does. And, it's the same thing like in the first Batman. He figures out that combination basically just from, I don't know. He's just reading stuff. I don't know. Yeah. He's in his basement. He's just like, he's in his Batcave basement. And he's just like, okay, so it's just a combination of chemicals. All right, we're good. And like, you don't ever get to the point where like, how did you figure that out? Did you do a whole bunch of experiments? I'd like to see you with a beaker in front of you at least once. So, and it's always like that, and like the thing in The Dark Knight where he knows who that dude is after the big shooting in the mayor and all that other type of stuff, where he's like, he's from Arkham Asylum and all that. Like, how do you fucking know, man? I wanted to see the part where you went through the roster of Arkham Asylum and just memorized all those names and faces to whoever you might run into. So yeah, I would love to see a detective Batman, like, something where we're actually seeing the process.
Yeah, I agree.
Barrett.
Yeah, seeing that character in different contexts, I think it would be genuinely just fun, just to kind of see how he can use this ability, because he is mortal and he is, human, which makes him unique essentially in the superhero universe. I've kind of got somewhat of something like that. This idea was inspired by a recent news story where a woman in Tennessee, actually outside of Nashville in Goodlettsville, had ended a relationship with her boyfriend. Boyfriend said, "I'm going to kill you," and so she took a restraining order out on him. And it turns out that he had been stalking her since then for the last couple of months, and basically had been breaking into her house and things like that. And so just a couple of days ago, actually, she was getting a security system installed and found that the guy had snuck into her house and had gotten under her bed.
Oh, my God.
And so she
shot him, didn't she?
She discovered him and she shot him in the foot. She saw his feet sticking out from under the bed. And she shot him in the foot and held him at gunpoint until police showed up.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, this girl's a badass. But it got me thinking about, what if you had like a taut, suspenseful, like stalking drama with two of these superheroes? And what I thought about is, what if Wonder Woman was being stalked by somebody like Batman? All right? Because in these movies, what springs to mind immediately is like Enough, the movie with Jennifer Lopez. Right. But there are much better examples of stalking movies.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to see, because he is human and she's obviously superhuman, is to see somebody like Batman getting into her head. They form a relationship. They have this bond, and then it ends badly. And because he is typically so obsessive, I could totally see Batman like coming after, stalking a woman, especially somebody like Wonder Woman, right? And if you can imagine, like, you know, the how terrified this woman was in reality to see this guy with his feet sticking out of his butt. Like, imagine that's Batman, you know? It would be even crazier, right? I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Your movie has second and third act problems, Barrett.
Dark. It's dark.
Yeah, it's super dark. I don't want to. I'm not pissing on your idea. I think if you give it to the right person, maybe it would be something, right? But yeah, it would be super dark. And do we want to see Batman in that light? He's sort of gotten away with being obsessive because, well, at least he's doing the right thing. In this case, he's not doing anything.
Yeah, well,
redeeming.
hey, no, I didn't say he was going to be beloved, but I think to mitigate that disparity between her superpowers and his just, you know, ingenious, if he could get into her head and kind of lodge in there, and strike that fear into her that he does to other people, I think that would be something interesting for sure.
We'd have to get somebody like who would direct this movie? No, James Toback. Get James Toback to do that. You know, something that's in that obsessive type of thing. Or Paul Schrader. You could get Paul Schrader to do it. That would be interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm not saying your movie can't work. I'm just wondering, is there a way to get a bunch of people to go watch it? Maybe not. I don't know.
Maybe just Rutger Hauer fans.
Yeah, maybe Rutger Hauer.
You'd have to have Rutger Hauer.
You'd have to get all 5 Rutger Hauer fans to come watch it to make a profit.
Round them up and watch it frequently.
Yes. Okay. I've never been shy about saying Quentin Tarantino should do something different with different genres or whatever. I believe that Tarantino would be a great horror movie maker, and I think it would make it a lot of movies that we generally just get tired of a lot. He would make them better. I think he would make a superhero movie super great. And I was sitting there thinking, like, maybe the Pulp Fiction type of comic book hero movie or whatever. And then I was thinking, is that Sin City? I don't think Sin City really qualifies. No. Sin City is definitely pulpy, but it doesn't have that great dialogue in it. It doesn't have anything that I chew on. Like, Sin City makes me fall asleep. It's very much style over substance to me. But I thought about it as sort of framing it in the way that Tarantino did Jackie Brown, which is sort of it's a movie about aging is basically what it is. It's got a way more exciting story than the theme that I just put it, but everybody in the story is an aging something. They're not in their prime. But think about, I was sitting there thinking about, like, what if you had a superhero who's like towards the end of his life or whatever, and he's got to do one more thing before he retires or whatever. And what if it's Tony Stark or somebody like that who's like gotten to they're in their 60s or something like that, and just having just general dialogue with all the other aging superheroes and everything. If you can put Tarantino's spin on it, it would be an interesting thing. One last evil that they have to defeat. And their sort of their musings on it and everything. There's other things too that you could do. You could do the Pulp Fiction-y way, which would be what the superheroes do when the world is not being attacked. Just what their lives are in general while they're waiting for the next big bad to show up and everything. And it's just them going around walking and talking and having dialogue and things like that. But I always thought that Tarantino would be great as far as just going across a genre. And I would love to see what his spin on it. And he's always talked about comic books in every script, it seems like, especially in the 90s.
Yeah.
He's obviously a comic book fan. I don't know if either the studios don't want him to do it, or he hasn't ever found something that he wants to do. I'm not sure.
I think there's a similar thing to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. Like, I don't think a studio would want Just like they don't want their hero Batman to be painted as evil or terrifying. I don't think they are ready to take, Captain America and put Tarantino's words in his mouth, because if Tarantino ever makes a superhero, there's going to be a lot of fucks in that movie and maybe a lot of N-words.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe so. It would be, even for Tarantino, I think it would be extremely weird for him to just throw those in there unless
find a way.
Unless it's like, it's like a remake of, I don't know, was it Meteor Man that came out in the 90s? Like, I don't know, exactly how he would do that, but I guess he would find a way. You're right. He would find a way. But yeah, I don't have like, obviously I don't have like a big treatment here. I just think that if he did it, it would be great, because you would get to hear them talk like normal human beings for once, and have discussions about what they do and everything. That's not just, it's not just like, hey, we killed a bunch of people in the last movie. We're sad about that. Let's have a civil war over it. It would be more than that, Yeah. It would be a lot more, I don't know, dialogue based than your typical action movie, but he would still be able to throw some good action in there too.
I bet he would. But that, seeing them talk like normal human beings is a perfect segue into one of my other ideas.
All right.
Which is, I want to see like Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson in a When Harry Met Sally style romantic comedy. And we don't see Spider-Man's activities. That's just one of the things that complicates their relationship. And you get the kind of repartee and quality actors that can maybe get Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy like 20 years ago, who have the right chemistry to make something like that engaging. And again, of course, they'll never ever make this movie, and they're never going to make a Spider-Man movie where you don't see Spider-Man being Spider-Man. But I think it would be a very interesting way to sort of put that all aside. That's just one of the hurdles in their relationship issues over, Harry Met Sally is over the course of several years, and you can do that kind of thing here. I think it'd be a really interesting way to take a look at that character.
Yeah.
So all of the Spider-Man stuff would be off camera?
Yeah, in my mind it would. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and you could, I mean, they kind of do that in the other Spider-Mans where, you see Mary Jane, like, wondering what's going on with Spider-Man or whatever. But this would be sort of more, you would see this more where she's, alone in her apartment or whatever and watching the news. And
why don't you even put another couple in there, like When Harry Met Sally, and you'd see her bitching to her friend at the coffee shop about how often he's off playing Spider-Man and yada, yada. I don't know.
Well, and it would also be great if they got into the sex that they have too. I mean, because that's what When Harry Met Sally was about. Like, And it's like, can you imagine what kind of sex Spider-Man and Mary Jane are having? Especially when Mary Jane like figures out that he's Spider-Man. It was like it would open up a whole new world as far as
the ceiling today.
Yeah, exactly. We can do that. I can put the webs out. Because and this has you have that. It would be great if it had some frank discussion about it and everything too. It would be hilarious.
Oh my god!
I mean, you specifically picked that movie, so I mean, I'm sitting there thinking like just. You wouldn't repeat the diner scene, but you'd have stuff like that in it.
Right. It's a romantic comedy. Anyway, that's a pretty thin idea. Why don't you take your turn, Barrett?
Yeah, well, I was interesting that you brought up Tarantino, because I was thinking about superheroes in like an Inglourious Bastards type of context. Mm-hmm. And by that I mean like in like a revisionist history type of thing. And when I thought about that, obviously it's First Class and Days of Future Past and things like that. But if you could get some of the oldest superheroes, I use Captain America in this example. I know he's in cryosleep until whenever. But, Wonder Woman, Captain America, Wolverine, things like that. In something like
you just crossed.
I know, I just crossed the whole universe.
You crossed the DC Marvel stream, which is not a big deal because I'm going to do that. So
that's going to make these ideas impossible. Is getting those two universes together,
right?
I'd like to see them in like a Vietnam era like war movie, you know, and what their decisions and what their actions do impacts the war in general. It impacts how America sees them, how the world sees them, how the world sees Americans, things like that.
Okay, Barrett, didn't you just pitch me Watchmen?
No, I did not pitch you Watchmen.
Okay.
Because these are encapsulated into a single time point, and a volatile time point too. And I think having like the real do-gooders be except for maybe Wolverine, but like kind of the ones that are always fighting for the right side, being, the ones that really affect the outcome of history in such a weird time. I think it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, we would obviously have to try to find a way to make that different from Watchmen, even though Watchmen really only, well, as far as the movie is concerned, I haven't read the graphic novel or anything, but the movie barely touches on Vietnam and what the effects are of it.
Yeah.
He just, it's Dr. Manhattan coming in and blowing a whole bunch of stuff away. And then for whatever reason, they still need, the comedian to shoot some people. I don't know why, but yeah, it's like a 5-minute section of the movie.
Exactly.
Doesn't he not just shoot people? He shoots like the chick in Vietnam that he impregnated, right? Like,
yeah.
That's, okay.
Yeah, he does. But I mean, the scene that they show is, they do Ride of the Valkyries and everything, which I'm like, okay. I mean, Apocalypse Now did that. I guess that's a thing. But like, we probably shouldn't talk too much about about Watchmen because everybody thinks we suck at Watchmen. But like, Manhattan comes in and blows away all these people with his but just holding his hand out. And then meanwhile, there's comedian up in a helicopter going, all right, I'm going to shoot all the people you don't blow away. You don't really understand much that's going on there unless you've read the graphic novel, I don't think. But yeah, like if you made it all across Vietnam somehow, and you made it where it wasn't some all-encompassing Dr. Manhattan character that can just basically just wipe everybody out when he wants to.
These are people kind of tied to some semblance of reality, and it'd be interesting to see how they interact with themselves and I think the common theme of all this stuff for the superhero movies is that the lack of stakes, right? Like we know they're going to defeat the evil doer. It doesn't matter how impossible it looks. They're going to end up defeating him,
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess that's where Marvel comes up with the idea to put them together or put them against each other, or DC too. They have them fight each other, and there's stakes, but those didn't end up having any stakes. So it's kind of, you have to take it into a different viewpoint of whether, it impacts history itself, or basically just kind of pare it down to where it's a relationship, like what Jeremy was talking about, or like, dialogue driven, like what Chris was talking about.
Well,
change the whole concept of what you're going for.
I'll tell you how your idea might even be intriguing. You sort of touched on this in the last thing you just said there. But what if instead of it seems like we're very American centric in these comic book heroes and everything. There's maybe a few others that show up from different countries now and then, but not with the same volume as they come out of America. And I guess that's understandable because most of our comic book heroes are American or whatever. But what if, you had a Vietnam War, but Vietnam had their own set of superheroes, and they have to also, they're using them in the war against our American superheroes. So you could have something like that, and they have their whole different subset, and they don't really know what to expect from them because, maybe they've been hidden by the media. Nobody knows anything about them. The government doesn't know anything about them. So that, you get somebody like Captain America or Superman or somebody like that, once again, crossing the streams. But you get those guys showing up in a war, and they don't have any idea what they're about to face.
No.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I think that could definitely work. I don't think we're making these things up so that, hey, do you think do you think this will work, guys? I don't think we're really doing
Sold.
it. Yeah. My next one that I'm going to talk about is kind of like that. I'm definitely crossing the streams here. DC and Marvel, are going to go mano a mano on this. A comic book superhero movie where they go into the Running Man.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Bloodsport, but that's just as good.
Bloodsport would be fine too. But I think that immediately you come up with your best superheroes. DC and Marvel both come up with their best superheroes, and we seed them like the NCAA tournament. And it's not going to be like the Running Man where you're trying to get your freedom or whatever. Maybe it is. I don't know. But you have to seed them, and you have to have a number one seed. You have to have 4 number one seeds or whatever you want to do there. But right off the bat, one of the number one seeds is going to lose that first battle. 3 of them are going to stay, but one of them is going to lose, because anything can happen in this motherfucker. So like, I think it would be awesome to see one-on-one battles with all these different characters. It could be Marvel versus Marvel, Marvel versus DC, all these different things. I would love to see those rather than 50 scattered battles at an airport with, Captain America, Spider-Man, and et al. I would like to see these guys just going one-on-one.
Huh. In a more like systematic environment? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Like, what do you mean?
In a more systematic, like, they set it up to where you have to fight this person.
You have to fight this person rather than, Ant-Man, he can be small. He can, he just decides to go after this one guy in this big, huge melee, which I get bored with really easy.
So this is more of like a Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter type of thing, where it's one-on-one. They have to, if they move on, they, advance. And
it's more, but maybe we have something a little bit extra thrown in, more Running Man type sci-fi type stuff thrown in there too. Maybe it is their freedom. Maybe they are in a world where there's cops that can actually arrest these type of, superheroes or whatever. It would be kind of like, I guess Bloodsport or something like that too, but, or Karate Kid, if you wanted to say that, but, it's more of a tournament. And, I guess, in these type of battles, it all comes down to the screenwriter and the filmmakers as to who they think would win, but,
and the editor, right? Of these fight scenes.
Yeah. But I think that would be fun to have them, sort of just go, and it's basically a society that maybe is done with superheroes, and maybe all they can do with superheroes now is have them fight for fun. And maybe you'd have to have a sort of a legal system where the cops are strong enough to take down superheroes and are able to get them into some sort of arena to fight, or maybe they need it for money. Who knows? There's a whole bunch of ways. I would just rather see these guys fight each other one-on-one than I would like to see them scattered across an entire airport or whatever. So,
even though that airport did have a cameo from the Bluth stair car from Arrested Development.
Oh yeah. It did.
I agree with you.
Not to say that scene doesn't have great moments in it and everything. I'd just rather see this other thing go down. So
yeah, no, I'm down. I like that idea a bunch. It'll never make it, but it's awesome.
No, that's right.
And is it my turn?
Yep.
So I actually, because of this podcast, I fell down a rabbit hole of Aquaman knowledge. And actually, when Aquaman came out in like the early 40s as a comic book, and at the time, most of what he did was fight U-boats in World War II and German, submarines and whatnot. And I was like, God damn, that sounds awesome. So give me The Hunt for Red October, or, a movie like that. Probably again, show me Aquaman more as something to fear from the perspective of the crew in the boats that are trying to get away from whatever whales or bullshit he's throwing at them. But I want it to feel like a tense submarine underwater World War II thriller, but with Aquaman.
Das Boot.
Yeah.
With Aquaman.
Yeah.
I would watch that. I like pretty much every submarine movie I watch except U-571.
How are they interacting with Aquaman though? From the submarine.
I didn't go back and read the comics from the 40s. I'm just saying that I read on Wikipedia that in the 40s, most of his adventures were fighting Germans in World War II underwater. I don't know what he did. I'm speculating.
No, I'm just thinking about like this movie. Would it be from the perspective of the Germans, or would it be from the Aquaman's
from the perspective of the Germans? Because I think it'd be more interesting to be like, well, where is he now? Oh, what's coming at us now? And that would make it more tense, I guess.
Well, it would be be interesting to see him sort of direct underwater like this huge battle of some sort,
Yeah,
like somehow able to communicate to the subs that, this is coming, or communicate to these whales, hey, you need to go over there and knock that thing off or whatever, it's like,
There'd be a lot of whale carnage in this
absolutely.
movie.
Yeah.
They're just getting in the way of submarines.
I want our big whale to go over there and blow this submarine.
Just take one for the team.
Yeah, blow this submarine up into the water and through its blowhole, and and make it just you have a scene where the whale goes underneath the submarine and it blows or whatever, and the submarine just rockets into the sky.
Okay, regardless of the actual battles and what happens, I'm just saying it would be neat to see a tense submarine movie where instead of like missiles, they're having to dodge a superhero's attacks. I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Totally.
I gotcha. Barrett.
Yeah. All right. They alluded to this a little bit in X-Men Apocalypse, and it's the ability of Professor X to get into Apocalypse's head and get into or allow him into his head. And at that point, then they kind of supposedly evened up the score and the abilities, and he was able to. It's almost like Freddy Krueger. You're in my world now, that kind of thing. And that was an intriguing thought to me. I think they did it terribly. I think nothing came out of it. It really didn't mean anything to the overall, conclusion of the movie and everything. But it got me thinking about a movie from 2000, The Cell. Do you remember The Cell?
Oh, yeah.
With Vincent D'Onofrio and Jennifer Lopez and Vince Vaughn. And that was a really interesting concept. Again, kind of, clumsily done. I think that was Tarzan Singh's first movie or directorial debut.
Yep.
But, if you could get like Jean Grey or something like that, or even Professor X or somebody that had the ability to transport somebody into somebody else's mind and battle them there with all the kind of strange, absurdist, hyper-stylized, backdrops, I think that would be really interesting to see.
Sort of a superhero Inception, I guess.
A superhero Inception, kind of like the idea with The Cell, as opposed to something like, Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's just kind of a horror film in there, is that she had to go deeper to where she kind of like went to the core of who this crazy monster serial killer was. And that's how she extracted the information that she needed to save these women. And if you had kind of that sort of mentality with a superhero kind of doing its own superhero business, I think that would be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it would be fun to see them travel into these weird worlds and like all these just different, like you said, The Cell and Inception and all these places where it's not, the physics of everything are not really well known. And they have to sort of adapt to it and improvise even.
And it can be as bonkers as you want it to be. I mean, with Inception, they had sort of rules and structural integrity and things like that, but it can really be crazy if it's in the right hands.
And with Inception, you could even have something where you think that one person is inside the mind of another person, but there's actually a third person that's sort of controlling everything. They're inside the mind of someone who is inside the mind of another person. So there's unlimited possibilities on that, I think. So I would watch that.
Yeah,
Totally.
It sounds trippy.
Yeah, man. All right, what do you got, Chris?
Yeah, the last one that I have is, I think it would be good just to have an epic, a regular epic. You see them from birth to teenager to adult, and to death, all through their entire life. Picking on, three major moments, I guess, that happen in their lives where they were needed and everything, but also going through their loves and their, losses and all these other different things. The last one that kind of did it, but didn't do it like that was Superman. We got to see, kid to teenager to, to adult, and that's about it. But I want to see the full story in one movie.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
You just have a whole whole thing where they're learning they're learning their craft, they're learning about the abilities, all this other type of stuff. And then the first thing that comes to mind, this is going to sound stupid, but Forrest Gump is the first thing that pops in my mind. Not have a superhero that's Forrest Gump, obviously, but sort of go through like at least a good 30 years of his life, to the point where, I just think it would be nice to see it go past even that point where they're approaching death and everything. And
doesn't 10 Commandments follow Moses all the way from birth to old man?
I think it does. Yeah.
Something like that would be rad, man. I really like that idea.
Yeah. So I think it would be good. Like it wouldn't be so action intensive and heavy, but it would have great moments like that. And you would be able to stage them, I believe, a little bit more efficiently than a lot of the comic book movies of today, because a lot of these comic book movies now are like, we've got to stick. Is it getting kind of boring? Let's put in some action scene, any action scene. So, I think you'd have 3 good set pieces in this, and then everything else is sort of the drama around his life.
That could even work within like an extended universe too, because you can either reference events that are going to take place in a different movie in that, and they could be done off screen, or you can have that be a part of the big action set pieces.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Like if you did something like Batman or whatever, you could go through his entire history. And I think, we've gotten to, in the comic books, like old Batman, right? Like, have we gotten to dead Batman other than the Bane stuff?
He broke his back. But he came back in the actual comics going on right now. Batman became a god and sat on the chair of knowledge and almost found out who the Joker was. And actually, I think it was 3 different Jokers. And for like a year, Commissioner Gordon has been wearing a Robo Batman suit, playing the role of Batman.
Okay. So basically the story there has been that when he's aged, it's some other new Batman that's coming through and everything. And in this one, I feel like we don't have anybody who can fill the shoes. Maybe you do, but I feel like it's better and more dramatic if he is special and he's the only person
and when he's gone,
that can do it. And when he's gone, he's gone. You had an era there where you were able to appreciate him, and now he's going, and you don't have anybody.
See them making this movie, dude.
Yeah, I think it would be. I think this is the one idea out of all the ones that I had that I felt the strongest about. That I felt like this could be something that you could do, and it would be amazing, and it could, you could do so many things with it. And getting back to what Barrett was talking about with the like, if you did it with Batman or something, you'd find small moments to refer to that, would be fan service or whatever, I just had a thing over at this place or whatever. It's very, very well known comic book, that he did these different things or whatever. But in this idea, you would just have you'd have a basic superhero that you sort of invented out of thin air, like not anybody that's known. But yeah, that's what I was going for there.
Yeah, that's great. I love it.
Okay, so are we ready for some Q&A?
I think we are.
Yeah.
Question.
I got something to say. I want the truth.
I am listening.
You guys ready?
Yep.
All right. So we took these mostly from Twitter, I think, a night or two ago. I asked for some questions. So the first person we're going to answer their question wanted to know about our favorite movie deaths that were way over the top.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to avoid any comedically over-the-top deaths that were over the top for the sake of comedy. And we're talking about deaths that were supposed to be, in a realistic, within that movie setting. And so the first one that came to my mind is one of the most recent, and it's probably not even the best example, but it's that poor assistant girl in Jurassic World who gets absolutely decimated over a period of like 6 minutes by these goddamn pterodactyl, whatever the hell they are. And it's like, I remember we made a sin about it. She gets dragged underwater. She gets free so many times. She gets flipped from one to another, and then she ultimately dies. It's like one of the most horrific deaths I remember in recent years.
Yeah, and they did it on a character that nobody cared about at that point. It was just like, oh, she was supposed to take the kids around, and let's have her have the most horrific death for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine is. I referenced it. I think in our Civil War review is Ultron from Age of Ultron.
Oh,
He gets killed so many times. I mean, it's through the network from Vision, and then it's Vision and
true.
Captain America and everything, and then it's Vision at the end that kills him more. It's like a Rasputin level of like steps of killing somebody. And he just won't die, and he just keeps coming up and like more serenely getting killed, and it's torturous to watch, I think, but it's way over the top for sure.
I was not okay. So this one is maybe violates the rules that I'm thinking of here, because I did not know we were not going for.
Oh no, you can name one. I was just the rules don't matter.
Okay, good. I'm glad they don't matter, because I do believe that Samuel Jackson's death in Deep Blue Sea is over the top, but it's also humorous because he is sitting there, he's he's rallying the troops and everything, and he's like, "We're going to get this thing," and blah, blah, blah. And it's the most surprising moment I've ever seen in a movie theater, I think. The shark just comes out of nowhere and eats him while he's doing that. And just, I think I was in the middle of shock and laughter during that entire scene. I mean, Deep Blue Sea, I guess you could almost call that a comedy, the way they do things, but I don't know. That's probably one of the more over the top.
Isn't it interesting that at that point in time when that movie was made, the big rally of the troops speech was so overdone that this movie decided to cut into the middle of one for effect, and it works. But the actor who was in that movie now makes a living giving stupid rally of the troops speeches in every Marvel movie that comes out.
It's true.
That's interesting.
So true.
All right, so what's the worst movie made by a really good director? And then the example they gave us was Duncan Jones with Warcraft, which is, I don't think that's a great example because he hasn't made very many movies. And Moon was really good, but I don't know if his resume is such that we can say he's a great director.
And he also did Source Code.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, which was a pretty good movie. But yeah, anyway, yeah, I know what you're saying. He doesn't have a huge resume.
Right.
That's where you're like, oh, how did he come out with this? Yeah.
Now, I will say Brad Bird doesn't have a huge resume. He's only directed 5 films, but the first 4 were A+, and Tomorrowland is not. But I'm going to sidestep that because, again, I went down a rabbit hole, and I didn't even realize that Sam Raimi directed For the Love of the Game.
Oh, wow.
With Kevin Costner pitching a no-hitter and reflecting back on his life through the no-hitter. It's a terrible movie, one of the only bad sports movies Kevin Costner's ever made, and it was directed by Sam Raimi. Come on.
Yep. Wow. I remember this movie coming out and just even then when the trailers were going, I was like, Sam Raimi? Are you fucking kidding me? Makes no sense. But it feels like something where it's like, if you do this, we'll give you Spider-Man, that type of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if For Love of the Game is Sony, but if it is, that tells you the whole story right there. But yeah, it makes no sense.
I got a quick one. Intolerable Cruelty with the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
I remember very little about this movie besides that I actively disliked it. It's got really good characters in it. It's got really good actors, Clooney, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Billy Bob Thornton, and it's just not well done. I don't think it's very funny.
I don't like it.
Yeah, I did not like this movie, but there are some apologists for this movie, surprisingly, and there's some people that I would think never would like this movie who do. It's just and they've made a few of these actually in the past few years, even where it's just like, this is just not you guys. I don't know what you're doing. So.
Clooney's out there, like he's really trying to bring like the Cary Grant crossed with like over the top comedic reactions and everything, which worked for him. At least the latter part of it worked for him in like Oh Brother Where Art Thou, but this doesn't work.
Yeah. This is the one that I have is mentioned on Jeremy when we emailed and everything. Jeremy mentioned this one, I think, but Francis Ford Coppola doing Jack. the Robin Williams as a kid movie, basically is what that is. This is the director of The Godfather and Apocalypse Now and all that, making this shitty comedy with Robin Williams. And I remember in the Nashville scene, one of the capsules, I think it was Jim Ridley, who was like, when I saw the directed by Francis Ford Coppola, he said, I couldn't have been more surprised if it had said, Jack, it's raining cheese. Yeah. It's kind of like that. Because it just doesn't make any sense that he would direct that movie.
Yeah,
he's sort of at the tail. I don't know. He's not the tail end of his career, but he was, I don't know. It was in the mid 90s, I think, mid to late 90s when that came out. He was, I don't know, Coppola was just, I don't know what he was doing in that time. He'd come out with something like The Rainmaker, which was fine, but like that, what was that? I would also put honorable mention as Spielberg in 1941. Is another one that doesn't make sense, especially in that trajectory that he was in the middle of that great run there. And this is why it's so hard for some of these directors to have a streak like Reiner or John Hughes. Spielberg did Jaws, Close Encounters, and then in the middle of that, 1941, and then Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T. It's like, what happened? How'd that happen? Anyway.
I do want to do one more thing. Somebody had asked if we were going to be filming the setup of the studio, and I don't think we did. But I do want to know how many people who are out there that would actually want to see video versions of this podcast, not necessarily to see us like listen and then watch it again, but maybe those who would prefer, for whatever reason, to have it on YouTube as opposed to just audio only. If that exists, we can certainly start setting up cameras in the studio and try and start tinkering with that and see what you guys think. But I just wanted to do an informal poll. You can tell me on Twitter. You can tell us on SoundCloud. Do you care? Do you want to see video of the Sincast? And if enough of you do, I guess we'll try and do it.
Okay. And speaking of SoundCloud, keep going to SoundCloud for comments and stuff. You can also go to Twitter and give us your comments. Tell us what you think of the Sincast. But that's going to hit it for this one. This is Chris Atkinson, Jeremy Scott, and Barrett Scher signing off. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit CinemaSins.com.
That's nice. That's a nice rod. I like that rod.
Oh, yeah.
That's a Waterworld reference for you right there.
Oh, yeah.
That's a what?
That was a Waterworld quote.
I was going through and I found a box full of buttons from my movie theater career.
Oh, man.
And it goes really far back.
I used to have such a collection, but I lost it.
Oh, that's too bad.
Buttons like from movies?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
The oldest one, I believe, is Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
Wow.
And that one came out in 93. And then I had The Rock in there. I had Batman and Robin, Hunchback of Notre Dame. It was a bunch, and just some weird ones too, like Titan AE and Dinosaur and stuff like that. There's a pretty good and varied round of movies in that button collection there.
I remember 97 was the first year the theater I worked at had a competing theater in town, so we had to start splitting movies. Mm-hmm. And before the movies came out that year, we were pissed because they were getting like Batman and Robin and all these big movies, and we were getting this weird Men in Black thing no one was sure of yet. And then, of course, by the end of the summer, we had owned, because all of our, riskier picks or whatever, lesser looking picks dominated the box office. Batman and Robin was a bomb. So, anyway, just funny.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Roland Emmerich's newest one. Did you read about this?
No.
He just sold a script to Universal for a movie called Moonfall, where it literally is about the moon falling to Earth and a bunch of misfits racing to save the Earth.
Well, and that's I mean, and this is I can't wait to actually get into that Independence Day review, but like I have a feeling that Moonfall is going to be just like 2012 and Day After Tomorrow. Like it's going to be the exact same movie.
Yeah.
It's going to be like, oh, we think the moon is falling. It's going to be on this date. And it'll be like, oh no, we made a horrible calculation. It's actually a lot faster than that.